What's up, everybody? Ross Reviews. I'm back at it again with another video, and today we're going to be talking Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to be talking character creation, and this is going to actually end up becoming a multi-part series on the channel here. So first, I just want to go over like how to create a character concept, some of the basic ideas and like what to think about, and then as we go through it, I'm going to go through like writing your backstory, how you can start to visualize your character, and how to like make them real, and then the final bit will be actually like filling out the character sheet and how to do that, and use the resources that both Wizards of the Coast and DnDBeyond have released for you, and then get you ready to play. So obviously, having an idea is the most important part, right? There's a million ways to do it, and I'm not going to sit here and say like my way's the best, but this is what I found and what works for me. I've got about probably like a half a dozen characters at the moment, and through making those, I've made them all like slightly different ways, so I don't want to say I've perfected it, but I found what works for me personally, and I'm hoping to pass some of that knowledge on to you guys. Now, having a cool mini is awesome. Having a cool portrait, on your character sheet, so everybody else at the table can visualize your character, is awesome. Having awesome dice to, complement the character, again, that only enhances what the foundation that you've built, right? So you want a good foundation like a house, and then, your dice can be considered like your cool media room, like, your mini is going to be like that super awesome kitchen you have. You got to have a good solid foundation of a character before you start doing all the extra stuff. None of that stuff is essential, but what is essential is having a character that most of all you as the player can get behind, and you want to play, and you want to tell a story, okay? So the other bonus of that is your DM's going to be excited to have this character in their world, and then your party members are going to be excited to have that character again in their party, and they want to see where their character is going to go with this character that you've built. So like I said before, I currently have about like a half a dozen characters right now that are just kind of like hanging out, two of which I'm actually playing in the two separate campaigns that I'm in right now. And then the other ones are just some backup characters and some other stuff that I used to just kind of get some thoughts down of some stuff that I think that would be cool to play later on down the road, whether it's in like an official D&D campaign, or it's going to be in, if I ever get a chance to play my DM's homebrewed world that he's been working on. All this kind of stuff is just kind of there, and I just need time to play it. The two characters that I'm playing right now, I have Einar Stonefist. He's a dwarf and a fighter, and then I have my newest character, Rom. He's a tiefling, and I'm playing him as the Hexblade warlock from Xanthar's Guide to Everything that just came out last November. Einar was a bit more of a streamlined and like straightforward character in terms of creation and backstory, because he was the first one I made, and I just wanted to make a quick one. I thought that I like went above and beyond, but I kind of just like straight hit the mark there. And then the more characters I made, the longer their backstories got, the more intricate they got, the more complicated they got, the longer they got. Like I think for Rom, I actually have a Google Doc that I shared with my DM to, give him some more information. Not totally necessary stuff, but, some stuff that I knew that I needed to know in terms of, how he would react in the world and react to certain things. And just some other like event type stuff that really kind of shaped him as a character. So he has access to all that, so he can, if he would want to, can pull some of that stuff into the campaign and use it. So Rom's backstory has like chapters, and like, it's really fucking long. I would love to do like an animated backstory for him, because I personally think it's really cool, and I made him. So but you don't have to by any means, you don't have to go that far. Your backstory could just be something simple as you could even say, I'm going to play like a half elf like, and think of like a Jon Snow type of guy, like, you know what I mean, joined a band of warriors that he thought were going to be really cool, and then come to find out it wasn't what it was cracked up to be, and you know, he left, and that's why he's on his adventure. You know, you can do something super simple like that and then have the DM kind of flesh out the rest of it if you want, or you can totally make it from scratch. So I'd recommend your first step being get yourself a player's handbook, whether it's like the actual hard copy physical edition, or if you know, you join DnDBeyond.com with a free account, so you can make your character through that and not have to worry about, you know, having the huge book. You can find access to it pretty much on the internet, whether it's through like a wiki or whatever, just to see like the essentials of what you need. So like your character, your race, your class, how to progress, all that kind of stuff. But there is a ton of stuff in there that's great for new players, like how to play the game, stuff like that. D&D Beyond is also a really nice resource that they just came out with, I believe, last fall. I could be wrong on that. But if you guys watch the second campaign of Geek and Sundry's Critical Role, they're all using D&D Beyond because they're a sponsor. So they have like the iPad app. So their character sheet, instead of having like a physical piece of paper, it's all on the iPad, and it changes through that. So that can be super helpful. Like I said, I'll put a link in the description below. They do have a free account, and then they have a couple other monthly tiers. And then you can even purchase the books digitally through D&D Beyond. And then there's a bunch of other stuff you can do with it. That might be its own separate video, because you can like link your campaigns and stuff, and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do with it. It's a really, really good resource. If you're new to the realm of D&D and you might not be creative or say imaginative like somebody, don't fret and don't get discouraged. I mean, you really don't have to be as creative as you might think for this type of stuff. Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is another book I have right here. These guys, this one actually has a bunch of tables and stuff in it, so you can just take your dice and roll for like how many people are in your family, what was your backstory. You can roll so many different things in this that it can take the guesswork out of like making your own character. So if you're not totally comfortable with it, I highly recommend getting that one and kind of rolling for it. You can also probably find some tables online, whether it's through Reddit or YouTube, Tumblr, anything. You know, I'm sure you can find somebody's made a table for something, and you just roll your dice, and then whatever it lands on, boom, that's the one you grab. Or you can just look through it and handpick them. You don't even have to roll the dice. So, for example, I was talking to someone, and she mentioned that she was trying to make her character, and it was an elf archaeologist, and that's really all she had at that point. Like, she was a treasure hunter. So, but she wasn't sure what else to do. So, I would recommend, like, when you're ready to go like that, you know, take a look at examples from, like, pop culture. Like your Indiana Jones, your Lara Croft, your Nathan Drake. And you can borrow elements from their character, whether it's their personality, say, their backstory, and just kind of plug in what you need to make it work for, say, like, the race or the class that you're choosing. Because when you play a character, you really need to know the who and the why first. So who they are, and then why they became an adventurer. Those are the two main things you need to know first, and then the how can come there shortly after. Now, you want to figure out what kind of character interests you. So is it like a fallen knight on a quest for redemption, like, say, Jaime Lannister? Or is it the classic hero's journey where, say, through certain circumstances out of their control, they were called onto an adventure, like a Luke Skywalker? Or is it simply someone who just gets bored living a mundane life, and you know, they just leave it all behind to see what wonders are in the world, and then, you know, they meet in a tavern with somebody, and, you know, however your DM is particularly getting the group together, you know, they'll fit that in. Now, the other thing I do want to mention, and I'll mention it more in the backstory video, but you don't necessarily have to make what's kind of like memed and called the murder hobo. Like, my character's parents died in a fire, and I've hated fire ever since I was orphaned at 9 years old. And, just make this super tragic backstory. You can if you want to. I mean, I'm guilty of it. Both of my characters that I'm actually playing right now have... one is, like, slightly tragic as to, like, why he's out adventuring, because he's looking for his family. But then... Rom, the tiefling, his backstory is like, it gets dark. I mean, that's why he's playing a Hexblade Warlock. It all makes sense, right? So you just want to make sure that everything makes sense as to like why things are happening, why your character is doing what they're doing. As long as you keep consistency, you'll have no problem. Like I said, this video is going to focus more so on the concept, and then through the rest of the series, we'll explore more in-depth ideas and additions to help you flesh out your character. So go through the Player's Handbook to start with, and other books like the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and Volo's Guide to Monsters, which I don't actually own, but my DM does. Those two books also have a lot of extra races to play and stuff. So all in all, I think there's probably about 24 official races to play, and then homebrew you can make literally anything as long as your DM approves it. Let's answer the who and the why. Okay, so for the who, obviously that's who are you? This will consist of two parts. It'll be your race and your class. Okay, so going back to my characters I mentioned earlier, Einar the dwarf, he's a fighter. So there's your race and your class. And then I have Rom, the tiefling warlock, the race and the class. So like I said, there's about 24 different races that you can choose from. But the main ones that you're going to encounter are kind of like the classic, the human, the elf, the dwarf, and the halfling, which is basically the Hobbit. Just they couldn't call it that. I think because of legal reasons. I'm not totally sure, but I believe it's legal reasons. And then you have also the tiefling, like I mentioned, that I'm playing. It's basically like a devil. Through a deal made with a devil, the bloodline was cursed, and then somehow your character ended up being the one, whether his parents knew it or not. And then the other way is, say one of your parents was a tiefling. Because every time a tiefling breeds, it always makes a tiefling, that kind of stuff. And then you have the Dragonborn, which, contrary to Skyrim, is not a human, but it's a humanoid dragon, which is really cool. Zach in one of my campaigns is playing one, and it's really fucking cool. And then you have a gnome, a half-elf, and a half-orc. And those are just the ones that are in the Player's Handbook. Like I mentioned, Volo's and Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide do have some more. And I just also want to note, D&D officially says that you can use the Player's Handbook plus one other book for character creation. So for a quick example, say you can choose your race from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, like a Tabaxi. Think like a Khajiit from Elder Scrolls games. But then you wouldn't be able to pick the Swashbuckler as your rogue subclass because it's actually in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So you'd be... the Player's Handbook plus 2. So that's officially not okay. But ask your DM, because they may let you do it, especially if it's not in like an Adventurers League or anything like that, and you're just out there to have fun. Just always, basically, if you have any questions at all about like what's okay and what's not okay, check with your DM, because they are the god of your campaign and your story, so they really do kind of say what goes and what doesn't. So just double check with them, because they might let you do it. So just go out there and have some fun. Now you can pick your subclass, or you can wait a little bit to pick it. So like with Rom, I knew right off the rip that he was going to be a Hexblade because I saw the subclass in the book, thought it would be really fun. So I kind of built his backstory around how he became one. And then with Einar, I basically told my DM what I wanted to do and what his backstory was, and then he was like, okay, well, it sounds like you probably would want to be a fighter, and then it sounds like the champion background would be your best bet, because it just all fits. So you can do it either way, and I think for your first character, definitely, have an idea, but chat with the DM. I'm gonna say that a bunch more times in this video, but like I said, like I said earlier, there's a million ways to do this, so just figure out what works for you. So on the subject of race, right? With Einar, I actually had the name, and I kind of had the backstory. And then when we were chatting, when we made the group text about the campaign that we were going to start up, and everyone was like, all right, well, if you have anything, like just kind of put it here so that way I can start, building the campaign so we're ready to go. And I said, well, my character's name is Einar Stonefist. And Rainey, the DM, said, oh, that sounds really cool. It sounds dwarven. And I really hadn't thought about it like that until he said it, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, okay, I'll play it. Yeah, dwarf sounds badass. Like I'll do that. It's not a human, it's not an elf. I'll do that. And then I showed up to the first thing, and turns out I actually had the most normal race of the bunch. Like in this campaign, we've got a goblin, me the dwarf, the tabaxi, a furbolg, which is basically like a giant type of character that kind of like live out in the woods, mainly druid type of guys. And then Gesh the Dragonborn, and then we've since added another character, and she's playing an Aasimar, which is the total opposite of the Tiefling. It's actually someone who has divine blood and is basically kind of like an angel. So we ended up becoming the Misfits because we don't really fit in anywhere. And then as I did more research on different races and stuff, I found the Tiefling race, and so they have devil's blood in them, and like they have horns and a tail, the whole nine. Like, they look like devils because someone in their ancestry made a deal with the devil, and they were the one who, it kind of showed up in. And then the world basically views them like cautiously. So I thought that would be really fun to play because, you go into a town and some interesting interactions and come with it if they do, say, try to avoid you, or if they're actually nice to you and you're used to people being dicks. So it brought a lot of variety and then allowed me to really create a cool backstory as well. So the takeaway of the two motives is I would recommend doing some research and definitely checking out a few different options from the books, whether it's just the player's handbook or you do end up grabbing a Volo's or a Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Just really do as much prep work as you can because you're going to get racial traits, which are basically bonuses to your skills. We'll go over what all that means later on. But they're going to get bonuses to specific stats. So they can be meant to either shoehorn you into like what that race is typically good at, or you can play against type and use those to kind of make up for some low rolls in some other areas. So, for example, if you were playing a mountain dwarf, you're going to get +2 to both your strength and your constitution. So that would significantly help if you're a fighter or a barbarian where those two classes are built on those two stats. But that doesn't mean you couldn't play a wizard, so when you have those lower rolls that you're going to dump into strength and constitution because you're saving your higher rolls for wisdom and intelligence, now you're not going to take as big of a hit because you have those 2 bonus points already ready to go. We'll get into more of that specifically and probably the last video in the series where I actually do the character sheet. But basically, those are something to think about. So that all segues really nice into class. Like, which class would you want to play? And that can be scary because there are 12 different classes, and then each one has, I think at this point now, somewhere between 4 and 6 subclasses. So each one of those classes is going to play differently from the other, and then each one of those subclasses is going to play different than the other. Now, it can be hard to kind of navigate that stuff if you're brand new, but you can just kind of ask yourself a couple of questions to kind of narrow it down a bit. So, like, basically, do you want to use magic, yes or no? No? Okay, well then you're probably going to want to choose a barbarian or a fighter. Yeah? Well then how much, do you want to use? Do you want to be just strictly magic? Do you want to be magic and weapon based? Because then if you want to be just magic, then say like sorcerer, wizard, or a druid would be a good fit for you. But if you do want that mix, then the paladin, the ranger, or the warlock would be another set of classes that you'd want to choose from. And now each one of those classes, like I said earlier, plays super differently. And I would love to get into it right now, but I feel like this video is already going to be super long to begin with. So I might do like a part 1A type of video where I just kind of explain the differences between the classes and stuff. But this should kind of just, like I said, we're just going for like the general concept here. So like, don't get married to it. Especially when you talk to the DM and you find out that some things aren't going to work like you thought it would, which has happened to me with both of the characters I've been playing. But yeah, I feel like this video is already like super long, and I feel like I may be overwhelming you at this point. So the main takeaways from this video should be create a character that you can get behind, because you're going to be the one who's playing it. Pick a race and a class you think will be fun, and don't be afraid when you describe your character to say something like, I'm playing a Jaime Lannister type guy who was in service to a not so honorable lord, and some shit went down and he had to bounce. That's why he became an adventurer. And then later on, after thinking about it more, you can start to flesh out that backstory. Like, okay, like what exactly did this lord do that led me to, whether it's attack or just leave or dishonor him in front of say his court, like whatever it is, you can figure that all out later. As long as you have the main concept, you can always make your tweaks later. Nothing's written in stone until it's on the character sheet, and even then you have the eraser. And then, lastly, and I'm going to say this probably in the end of every video, if you have any questions, by all means, like, don't be afraid to consult your DM. You're never going to look dumb consulting your DM. You just want to make sure that everything you're doing is within the realms of what they say is cool, in the realms of D&D is going to fit into the campaign and stuff. You're just trying to make sure that everything that you want to do is going to be cool with the people you're playing with and the DM. So I'm sorry if this is a little out of order and a bit of a rant, but make sure you drop your questions or your tips down below in the comment section. If you have any questions, I'm going to try my best to answer them as quickly as I can. Whether it's about a character or anything like that, any questions you might have, feel free to drop them down below. Like I said, I'll do my best to answer. And also down below in the info, you'll find, a link to Dungeons & Dragons website, DnDBeyond, and a couple other things that I feel, definitely help in creation and stuff like that. So check down there. Like I said, I'm not quite sure how many videos this series is going to have or how long it's going to take me to do it all, but let's see what we can get and go from there. Anyway, guys, this has been Ross with Ross Reviews. I'll see you next time.